Thank you, Marilyn. So I'm going to just walk through the pre-application and share some tips on how you would prepare that. As Marilyn said, it is a fairly brief pre-application that can avoid the more extensive work and information requirements of a full proposal if your project isn't a good fit or isn't ready to go yet. So I'm going to start by talking about the project summary. That's our first question here, your elevator pitch. And my top tip for you for that is that you want to be specific about what you're going to do, really be specific about your project. So here is an example of a one-sentence project summary elevator pitch that does a good job of answering who, what, where, and why. And I want to thank the Big Sur Land Trust for letting us use this example. So this sentence says the Big Sur Land Trust will acquire the 73-acre Carr Lake property as a first step to creating an urban oasis within the city of Salinas that will provide recreation, flood control, wetland habitat, and build climate change resiliency. So this, in just one sentence, answers the question, who is doing this project, the Big Sur Land Trust? What are they doing? They're acquiring the 73-acre property. Where is it? In the city of Salinas. And why are they doing it? To create an urban oasis with multiple benefits. There is a separate section in the pre-application to talk about project need, the why, but it's great to include a quick summary of the why right up front in your elevator pitch. So now I'm going to move on and talk about the project needs and project tasks sections. Let's start with the project need. And I'm just going to use an example from the living shoreline in San Diego Bay. So the project need, you have a couple paragraphs for this section. And we want you to start with, again, being very specific about what's the problem in your project location, your project area. So in this case, the applicant is telling us that there's been significant shoreline erosion at this site over recent decades, and that there's threatened species and natural communities that are in decline. We want you to follow that by showing us that the community has also identified this as a problem. And community can have different meanings. So in this example, I just threw in many different kinds of community, the city, the neighborhood association, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and their identification of different problems at this site: shoreline erosion, flooding, damage from storm events, and declining populations of a listed species. But of course, you might not check all these boxes. Just give us the information for what works for your project in terms of wider community identifying the issue. And then we also would like you to put this in regional needs. So start out by being very specific, but then put it into a regional context for us. And in this case, this project identified that this is a problem around San Diego Bay, and of course it's a problem in other parts of the California coast as well, that shallow water and salt marsh habitats have been lost to development. Sea level rise is increasing the vulnerability of aquatic communities and inshore areas to flooding and extreme weather. So that is the need section. And now we're going to talk about project tasks. So you can see right in the template for project tasks, the pre-application template gives you some examples of the types of tasks that we would expect might be involved in different types of projects: acquisition, planning, or implementation. And again, we want you to be specific about the project tasks, but you don't have to be incredibly specific at the pre-application stage. You can, we just want to get a good general idea of what you're going to be doing, and you can provide more details at the full proposal stage. You'll see also in the template here, it's noted that if long-term management is going to be applicable to your project, that we would like you to include a brief discussion of how that is going to happen. So here's an example of a task list that you might have at the pre-application stage. So you can see it's not overly specific, but it does give us an idea that you're going to be doing technical studies, design and engineering, environmental compliance, and engagement and outreach. You will also be using this same list in the project schedule section of the pre-application, which is question number 6. And there we're going to ask for you to give us estimated start dates and end dates. We understand that the project schedule is going to depend on when you get funding. You can't start if you don't have any money. So you can give us that schedule based on when you would, starting from when you would have funding available to go, and then tell us the completion date for this task will be 12 months after funding is received. Please be realistic with your timeline. It's important to us to understand when the project will really be ready to get started. And now let's talk briefly about the budget. This is the budget template, and here's an example of a summary budget. So a couple things to remember about the budget. First of all, you should make sure that the tasks you include correspond exactly to the tasks that you identified in the project tasks section. The other thing is that you can use round numbers in this budget summary. We don't expect you to have figured out everything down to the dollars and cents at this stage, and we know that things will change over the course of preparing the full application and then implementing the project. This is also a good place to show matching funds. You can see this column that says other fund sources. I want to remind everyone that we do not require matching funds. But if you do have them, it's good to let us know. It's great to leverage our funds when possible, but we do not require them. And I'll also just say you don't have to include them in this table because we don't need you to break them out by task the way they are here. So you can just include that information in the narrative. But if you do have matching funds, let us know. So that is the summary budget. And then if your pre-application looks like a good fit and the timing looks good and we have funding that could work for the project, then we would ask you for a full proposal. I'm not going to go through the full proposal in detail today because we don't have time to do that, but we want to make sure we have time to answer questions. But this slide does list some of the things that we ask for, in the full proposal. So we're going to ask for a lot more information. We're looking at 10 pages plus attachments, although there's no required length. That's just kind of an approximate number that you might need. We're going to ask for project activities, qualitative and quantitative project outcomes, specific linkages to the strategic plan and funding priorities and our project selection criteria, as Marilyn discussed. You're going to talk about your capacity to carry out this project, who owns the site, how long-term maintenance of the site will work. You go through the tasks and schedule in more detail, talk about permits and environmental compliance, provide us with a more detailed cost estimate, and also maps and design plans if that's applicable for an implementation project. So the top tip for this one, Marilyn mentioned we have this application guide on our website, and that will be a great resource that will walk you through all these sections and explain what we're looking for. So be sure to take advantage of that. I also want to let you know that we have a grantee manual on our website. So Marilyn hit on some of the things that are important to know about what the conditions of a grant would be in our granting process in terms of reimbursable grants and having to get us a work program and execute a grant agreement, all those things. We have a manual on our website under resources for grantees that gives a very detailed description of how our grants work. You don't need to read it all when you're applying, but if you have specific questions about how the grants are going to work that are going to be important for you, figuring out whether you can manage our grant from us or what you're going to need to do to be able to do that, it's a good resource. I also want to say you can reach out to us if you aren't sure about something in the application. We're always happy to help, but realistically, it may take us a little while to get back to you. And in terms of how to submit your proposal, it's pretty straightforward. You just use those templates on the website for the pre-application or the application, and then just send us an email to this grants@scc.ca.gov address. So don't mail us a paper copy, just attach your application to an email. Make sure to keep a copy for your records. And you should only send us the items requested in the checklist. There's an application checklist for the full application, and then the pre-application template walks through what we need. So at this point, don't send us any supplementary materials like PowerPoint presentations or letters of support. We might ask for those later, but when you're submitting your application, don't have to send those supplementary materials. And as I mentioned, there's an application checklist for the full application that's very useful. I do want to also say our templates that you can download are Microsoft Word templates. And we recognize that not everyone has access to Microsoft Word. So if you don't, then what you can do is download the template and then open it with a free program like Google Docs and fill it out in that program, and then you should be able to email the application that you prepared using that free program. So that's the story.
You would say that doc is, sorry, Joe, sorry to interrupt, Joe.
Oh, please go ahead.
You would say that it's a Word doc and email us that doc.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
Don't send us a link to a Google Doc.
Okay. So